Hi, for this modules, I want to talk about complex number. The one thing you need to remember about complex number is the definition of I. So let's take a look at the problems. So what I have right here is square root of negative 96. So don't forget that square root of negative 1 is I, because I squared gives you negative 1. So for 96, you see the perfect square in here is 16, but don't forget we have the negative 1, and then we have 16, and then we have 6, because 96 divided by 6 is 16. But I want to take care of the negative 1 and the 16. So what we have is 4i outside, and then we have 6. Okay, now the next problem, I want to make sure that you take care of the negative first. You take care of I first before you multiply, because over here, if you do this, let's just do the right way first. So the right way is you take care of I, and then what we have is you take care of I for this one as well. The reason I put radical 2 times 11 is because don't forget that radical 2 times radical 2 is just 2. So what we have is I squared times 2, square root of 11. But I squared is negative 1. So what we have is negative square root of 11. Now, from the beginning, if you multiply negative 2 times negative 22, you ended up with a positive number. And that's not true, because if you see the final answer right here is negative 2. So make sure you take care of the negative first before you take care of before you multiply. Okay, same thing over here. I want to take care of the negative. So what I have is negative I square root of 24 over square root of 8. So that's going to be square root of 3. Okay. All right. Adding, really simple. You take the real part, you add them together. You take imaginary part, you add them together. So real in this case is 2 and 3. Imaginary is negative 6 and 3. So that's what I have to do. So I take 2 plus 3 is 5. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. And you put I. Okay. Multiplication, simply FOIL. So we have negative 30 plus 30i plus 36i minus 36i squared. Don't forget that 36i squared, don't forget that I squared is negative 1. So with that negative 36, this whole thing becomes 36. Okay, so let's combine like terms. So we have 36 minus 30, which is 6. And then we have 66i. Okay, for division, it's like rationalize. So you are not allowed to have, we're not allowed to have I on the bottom. So I'm going to have to multiply by the conjugate. Multiply by the conjugate. So what we have is 15. And then I'm just going to FOIL. Don't forget I squared is -1. And then I can just do the shortcut here. So 4i squared. So this one becomes -12, right? So that's why we have 3 plus 29i. On the bottom, what I have is 9 plus 16 because I squared turned into a negative. So what we have is 25 on the bottom. So you want to do this 3 over 25 plus 29 over 25i. Okay, so that's how we write in complex form. All right, now this type of problem when you need to simplify the I. So keep in mind that I is I squared is -1. IQ is I squared times I, and I squared is -1 times I, so we get -I. I to the 4th is I squared times I squared, which is -1 times -1, which is 1. Now, if you go to I to the 5th power, you pretty much just go back to I, because what I have is I to the 4th times I, and then I to the 6th, you go back to I squared, and I to the 7, you go back. So we ended up with just these 4 answers. I, -1, -I, and 1. Okay, so if we have I to the 27, the answer is going to be one of those. So how do we do it? I always break the even number out. So I-27, instead of writing I-27, I'm going to put I-26 and I. Okay, so 26 is an even number. Therefore, I know it's divisible by 2. So it's going to be I squared times 13. That's I-26. The reason I want to use I squared because I know I squared is -1, 13. And if you have a -1 to the 13 to the odd number, you ended up with a -1. So that's just -1i, which is just -i. So that's how I do it. Okay, so I'm going to try a different one. So I'm going to try, how about I to the 30th? Now, obviously, I to the 30th, 30 is an even number, so we can just break it. 15. So we have -1 to the 15. So this is -1. Okay, so that's what we should do. You should always try to make the even number. And then because of the even number, we can make it from the I square. And then we go from there.